Many people know their zip code and remember the zip codes that they grew up in, and they knew what that meant. So when you went to school with someone in a certain zip code, there was a story that was created about them, whether it was true or not. So I grew up in zip code 20744. Now, one digit differently, 20745, was a different neighborhood, right? And that neighborhood got different resources. There was a different story that was told about that neighborhood, different experience when you drove through the neighborhood. And I remember someone telling me once that your education is determined by just one digit in your zip code. That meant a lot, because what I noticed in the neighborhoods that I grew up, that one digit could have meant the difference in being incarcerated, could have meant the difference in being bullied, could have meant the difference in different resources that I was going to obtain. So the zip code story really spawned from that concept that the United States Census Bureau uses your zip code to determine how well educated you will be, your kids will be, or you are, what type of healthcare you will be provided. And most importantly, how long you will live, right? And so the zip code story is very important when it comes to the stories we tell about others as well as ourselves. I delivered a presentation at the 2019 Inclusion Conference for SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management. Now, I had imposter syndrome, so I didn't tell anyone that I was speaking at the conference. When people ask me, I'm just a regular attendee. So it got down to the day right before I was speaking, and all of a sudden I spilled the beans. I told someone I was speaking, and they said, "What are you talking about?" I was like, class bias? And they were like, "Oh, that's interesting." I started to have a dialogue. Before you know it, someone 2 lines over heard the conversation, walked up to me, tears are streaming down this young lady's her cheeks, and she says to me, "What you're talking about in your course is my life." And she started to tell how class bias affected her being a teenage mom, on drugs, and homeless, and how she had a PhD, but they were still hitting rules that she couldn't navigate. And I met another person, and before you know it, I went home and changed my presentation to talk about the true story, which was the zip code story. And in that presentation, they put me on the last day and the last hour. And you know what happens at a conference? Everyone is headed out the door. But to my surprise, 60 people showed up to that presentation. And I'm gonna tell you, it wasn't my speaking ability. It wasn't my material that I put up on the PowerPoint presentation. It was about people being able to share their story in a safe environment and feel like they matter, their voices matter. And this was people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all genders, sexual orientation, and religion. And not only were people so excited that they wanted to talk about it, they wouldn't leave. People would not leave the room. The AV person had to pull the plug on the electricity and pull the plug on the microphone. My mind was blown. I said to myself, this is something that I want to pursue. An example of the zip code story in play, or the lack of the zip code story in play, is a nursing manager working at a hospital in Baltimore, Maryland. She said, "Well, I know I have biases, but sometimes they come and bite me in the you know what." And she was hiring a couple of nurses. And the nurse that she had on staff was from Nigeria in Africa. And she thought in her mind that if she hires someone else from Nigeria, they would just get along and everything would be okay. Not understanding the zip code story. So she hires a male nurse who's just out of school, right? He doesn't know much. But when he gets into the position, he's working overnight and he's having conflict with the nurse who's on staff. And the nursing manager, who identifies as being a white woman, says in her mind, "Well, I thought this was going to work out because you're both from the same place." What she didn't realize was they were from 2 warring tribes. And because of that, it caused even more conflict, not to mention the gender difference, right? In different cultures, they have different respect for different genders. This is why the zip code story is important, because it goes beyond stereotypes, right? It goes beyond just looking at you and where you're from and your skin color and maybe the language that you speak or even education. It goes deeper. It focuses on the nuances of who you are as a person. This is important when it comes to productivity in companies and organizations, and it leads to better business outcomes.